Hi guys, Intuition Annie here, and I am just launching this channel today, so very nervous, but I'd like to start with somebody who is still a doe and see if I can maybe throw out some theories and some things I think that might be different, and we'll see if you guys like it. I do want to say that I have been inspired by Brian Lorden, Lorden Arts channel. If you haven't been to that channel, please go check it out. Just type it in the YouTube search, and he's just kind of a regular guy who just talks about crimes and some theories, and it seems like people want more of that out there. And although some of these topics might be dark and stuff, it's something that needs to be talked about, and we'll see what I can bring to it. So today, basically, I am going to call her the Davidson County Jane Doe, found in 1976, and she's still, as of May 2018, she's still unidentified, and I'm going to provide some links in the descriptions here and cite some, like maybe about 3 or 4 of my sources, and if you have any information, you can get to that at the bottom of the description page here. But essentially, this kind of struck me because I felt like I could relate, and maybe that's why I've always loved. I've read every Agatha Christie novel out there. I've liked some of those types of like Dateline and 48 Hours and 2020, those types of things, and I can't really say where that's begun for me, but it's really always been an interest, and I think that the reason that it seems so interesting to me is because I see myself in these people in some way, and I've always been a browser, and like I said, sort of I've been on Web Sleuths for years and never really got involved with it, but I really do see myself in missing people or unidentified people, and it's not in like a creepy or bad way, but I feel like hey, that could have been me. That really could have been me at any point along my process of becoming an individual. Just something that I would have done, something young people do, or the things people experiment with. And although I feel fortunate enough to be loved and to be a grown-up now, obviously there's lots of grown-up missing people, but it's just that, wow, hey, I can really connect with that type of feeling. So what brought me to this Jane Doe, though, is that she's really young, and she had, besides a lot of other things kind of unique, she had a lot of self-induced cigarette burns on her arms, so self-harm. And I personally, when I was a teenager, I had a lot of issues with self-harm, and obviously that's not a positive way to deal with anxiety by any stretch of the imagination. but it's something I relate to, something I went through when I was a teenager. So that's just part of that draw to me. It's like, could that have been me? And even though it wasn't, maybe a part of me is looking for a resonance in this. And so Jane Doe, basically, if you type in Davidson County Jane Doe 1976, I believe there's another one from the 90s, but you want the one from 1976. That's what we're talking about today. And she was found by fishermen in Nashville, Tennessee. Right now I'm on justicefornativewomen.blogspot, and I'll provide a link in the description for this, and I'm just kind of, going off of this for timeline to start with. But her body had washed up against a branch in a river that usually stood only a couple feet high. Authorities estimated she drowned in the river. And I'm pretty sure that in one of these links in the description, you can see post-mortem photos if you choose to view that. She's really recently deceased, because you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between her sleeping and her being dead. And I do have also a background in anthropology, so I've seen dead people personally and been to a few autopsies myself, and obviously the various things that can affect people, the weather, different conditions of the body, especially somebody in water. And then we're talking about March 24th, 1976. So, and it's Tennessee, it's a humid place. She couldn't have been dead for very long at all, or there would have been remarkable, notable decomposition. But she's not. She looks like she's just asleep. They say only a few hours estimated. Her blouse had been removed and there was bruising on her chest and legs. She was between the ages of 14 and 17 and was 5'2" and 120 pounds. The thing that kind of strikes me about this is that she when people drown in the river, and we'll get to this in a second, but she was heavily intoxicated. She had a BAC of 0.28, and somebody who I personally has been later teenage kind of problems. You have to be somebody who drinks on a regular basis in order to not lose consciousness around that level of a BAC. Because usually between 0.30 and 0.40, a death occurs, or coma, or unconsciousness to the point of you're not responding to your environment. Like if you're passed out in an alley and people are just walking by you, that's not going to wake you up because you're not asleep, you're unconscious. So that would be the difference. When people drink on a regular basis and they get that tolerance up, they can drink a lot and stay awake for longer as their body becomes dependent on alcohol. So if she still, the fact that she got a BAC of 0.28 means that she drank on a regular basis. And that's the evidence for that. Obviously, what else is evidence of that is she told these people who picked her up when she was hitchhiking that she had just gotten out of a rehab facility for drinking, and then obviously her BAC obviously would seem to back this up. So even though she's not losing consciousness at this BAC, she would still be very, very impaired, and still having the instincts to not drown, but being so intoxicated, what people will do, like if they're struggling in the water for a while, is they will remove their clothes. So even after a while, something like a bathing suit would start to feel heavy, and the person will remove their top, their shoes, obviously probably first. And that's like when people are treading water, or they're trying to hang on to the sides of something, and they've got that kind of a grasp to a side, but they're not able to extract themselves from the water, so they're just spending this energy trying to keep above water, and they're it is one of those last resorts of the body, kind of like hide and die syndrome, where people crawl underneath small tables and beds and small tiny spaces as the body's last resort to these temperature changes that are happening while you're dying, essentially. And drowning is one of those things that obviously is affecting your body's temperature. So that is a survival type of thing. They did take a rape kit, and it comes back as negative for this. This is in 1976, though. But they say there's evidence that she had sexual intercourse within a few days of death. I mean, that's not unusual. It's the 70s, and it's, this is the time of, it's not quite the 60s, but it's still free love, experimentation, when people of different races are starting to just socialize and hang out together in a not thinking twice about it type of way. I think she's possibly maybe a fourth white, maybe an eighth white, a little bit, something like that. But she looks like she's either Hispanic or Native American for the most part. And that's why she's on this website, justicefornativewomen.blogspot. But, like I said, it kind of goes back to the free love. She might have been part of that, might not. But I mean, I think you can kind of brush aside the evidence of sexual intercourse, consensual sexual intercourse, that is, because, that really doesn't mean anything, and most likely has nothing to do with her death. She reportedly went by the alias Sherry or Cheryl. And this is what she told a couple of hitchhikers who were later interviewed by police. And they said she called herself Sherry or Cheryl, something like that. And that she and a friend had run away from a chemical dependency and mental health treatment center in St. Paul, Minnesota. And they were heading to Haines City, Florida. Now, if you go and you type in Haines City, Florida, it's kind of an out-of-the-way place. I mean, it's very specific, and it's not really by a whole bunch of metropolitan areas immediately. So that what makes me think they had to go be seeing somebody specific in mind when they were hitchhiking, because it's not like, oh yeah, we're just trying to get to Tampa, or we're just trying to get, to Atlanta, some specific city that, is just a city. I'm trying to get to the next city. I'm trying to get to this specific place. It's kind of out of the way. So obviously that makes me think that she was going to see some type of people she already knew, probably through her friend. And I'll go over some of the reasons why I think that here in a minute. And it was two men who picked them up, and it was this girl who was the decedent and her friend. And they pick them up, And they said, oh yeah, we're hitchhiking the Interstate 24. And her companion that she was with is described as about the same age as her, possibly a little bit older. But, and she's supposed to be between 14 and 17, so we're probably placing this young lady in her late teens, early 20s. And they were, together running away from this rehab facility. And the Caucasian female had blonde hair with these wire-rimmed glasses. And the companion told the hitchhikers that she was at the treatment center for suicidal ideation. So, and as you guys kind of know, even now they kind of house people who have vastly different problems together, but whether you're, having a chemical dependency or more of a mental health issue, they, people get treated in groups together, and that makes a lot of sense. And then it goes on to say in this article, police don't believe the motorists who picked Jane Doe and her companion up are responsible, as once again they were interviewed by police. And there are some sad notes to this story, but I still wanted to profile it because I still think that it can be solved, especially with the post-mortem photographs of her that are so good. Like I said, she looks like she's just sleeping, and somebody out there can still recognize her. Somebody could even remember her from this description and stuff, and kind of point the proper authorities here in the right direction, or throw out some theories, because this, although the woman would be middle-aged, she could obviously still be alive. Her companion, the blonde woman with wire-rimmed glasses, could still be out there. Jane Doe did die before the invention of DNA technology, once again 1976. She was subsequently buried in a pauper's graveyard, where many of the grave markers have since been moved. Exhumation of Jane Doe's body for DNA is now impossible. Side note to this here, I would say don't get all mad at the police and that type of feeling in this case here, because it's one of those things where sometimes in the 80s and 90s and 70s, right, they would preserve evidence that they could go back into storage and test, and it's that thing that just solved this case, right? Like, it just connects it all. But before the understanding of DNA, there was nothing to save. They took her photos post-mortem, they took her dentals, they put out descriptions of her, and they interviewed witnesses. They did try to find her, and at the time there was just no foreseeable way to understand that DNA would be coming around. And it's not that they treated her like shit compared to anybody else. It's just, that's what they did. They move bodies, and if a family or heir doesn't come and pay a fee to have the body exhumed essentially and removed to a different location, they will just leave it. And that's a classic standard thing that until, probably even 20 years ago or something like that, where, hey, they didn't pay, we're just leaving it. We don't know who this Jane Doe is. We don't know. So we can't put in the money for it. And it's, once again, it's just like they thought they took everything that they could from her to possibly identify her, except for her DNA, which they couldn't have foreseen at the time. So you've got to understand it in terms of its relativity to the situation, in the way that it could be understood at the time. It's very unfortunate. I mean, I've been trying to locate some ancestors, and same kind of issue with finding the exact grave where, except the graveyard was burned down. So we can't find an individual marker for that reason as well. Obviously, a lot of markers used to be wooden for, paupers and poor people type of thing, which would have been my relatives I'm searching for. But this is kind of a common deal. So just to kind of put that out there as far as what I think about that. She had very large breasts for her age. You can't actually see her breasts in the post-mortem photographs, but you can see like the tops right around it, and she does look like she's very full-figured. She's petite, 5 foot to 5'2". She had a mole on her left temple, and you can see that in one of the post-mortem photographs, and 2 surgical scars on her abdomen. Now, does this mean she could have had a C-section? Yeah. I mean, it could be a number of different things, depending on what side of her abdomen. Could be an appendectomy scar, something along those lines. But in any case, she's got that scar on her abdomen, and it can be one of the few things that help identify her. And once again, she had these old scars, and it looks like a typical self-harm teenager type of behavior. She's got like these burn marks up her arm that are just close together, healed up, and kind of like almost in a straight line. And I think that whatever she came from in her background, she was obviously traumatized by. She was suffering from coming to terms with that, suffering from coming to terms with becoming an adult, finding herself. And we can only speculate about what exactly she went through, because that's, for her alone. But I will say that, I really don't think that that's somebody else doing that, or I think that that's kind of how she ended up at a rehab facility. I think sometimes addictions go hand in hand with other problems, especially mental ones, and that's kind of the whole self-medication theory that, and when people get intoxicated, they do things that they just wouldn't normally do, as you guys would know. I'm sure that that's how a lot of suicides happen. Even with people who, hey, I'll never commit suicide. I really thought that I would be one of those people who would say that. I don't think that I can say that and honestly mean that, but my reasoning for that is, although I've been sober for a couple of years now, I just think that it's really a masking or covering up of some other problems underlying that, and like I said, people do things when they're intoxicated. So I would say that, I try my best to lead a good life. I exercise. I got my apple cider vinegar I drink every day. I really have a lot going on for me in life, but if I was, just like anybody else, if I was really, really intoxicated, anybody could take their life and not necessarily be conscious of that process. We've got a lot of deaths recently with rock stars, and of course that's all a debate, but I think that and it's sometimes you don't even have to be, a person doesn't have to be intoxicated to lose their sense of grounding in reality and that kind of thing. And so if you find yourself that intoxicated, just go, I don't know, go lock yourself in the bathroom and read a book, get away from things that you could decide to hurt yourself like that. Because if people say, hey, it would never be me, I don't know if that's something that can honestly be said. When you place yourself in these rare or extraordinary circumstances, the mind and drugs, and sometimes separate, sometimes together, are really powerful things. But yeah, in this case with Jane Doe, I don't think she did that like I'm going to commit suicide. I do think she drowned. I do not think this was a case of homicide, but of course I want to hear your theories. She has brown hair and brown eyes. In the post-mortem, it looks like she has her hair up in like a bun, which kind of makes me think of, oh yeah, she's not stationary in one place. She's going around, and she's she's just putting her hair back in a ponytail, right? It's like if I didn't want to do anything for a day and I just wanted to like chill at home, do Netflix and chores, that kind of thing, then I would throw my hair up. So kind of fits with her whole traveler, wanderer type of description here. So let's go over some of the personal items she had. She carried a nickel because she was found with her pants still on, a comb, and a photo of a small white child. On the back of the photo, the words "Little Charlie" were written with a phone number underneath that. Investigators later found out that little Charlie might have been the boy pictured on the photograph, but the phone number belonged to the hitchhiker, and that's how police were able to backtrack this and interview these hitchhikers. So they did not know the little boy in the photograph. They were shown the photograph. They don't know who this is, but of course we know she was traveling with a white female. So perhaps the boy in the photograph is the female's child or relative, obviously. And she had even mentioned to the hitchhikers that the little photograph she had, that she wrote their phone number down on, that was her companion's son. She wore a choker type of necklace with beads and a white dove. Very popular 70s necklace. It seems like, obviously, it's odd because back then and stuff, it could be a thrift store type of side of the road jewelry type of find, and that's what was popular, like bell bottoms and choker types of necklaces. My mom grew up in the 70s, so that's how I would know all those types of the costume jewelry that really was popular back then. She also wore a rawhide bracelet, and once again, it's not quite really too identifiable other than it's photographed with her, but it could have come from anywhere, costumes, thrift store, type of anything. And it says on this website here, Justice for Native Women, she's either thought to be Native American or Hispanic. I would say, after looking at her, I think that she could possibly be like, like 3 different races, like a little bit white, a little bit Native, and a little bit Hispanic. But I do think that even if she's like half Native and half Hispanic, I think that she's got a couple of different races going on. Because when you look at the picture of the side of her face, she almost looks Asian, which could come from being a part white. And so it's really hard to tell. Obviously, with a surgical scar, I mean, she was cared for at some point. And obviously the question goes, like, somebody placed her in this rehab facility. So she had known family and known relatives, and I mean, they knew that she was really struggling, and I mean, to their credit, they put her in the best place that she really could have been. I mean, she just escaped. And it's unfortunate in this case, it really is, but people out there know who this girl is, and it's really unfortunate that they will never be able to exhume her body for DNA and find out who she is. But I think with the dental records, and especially these post-mortem photographs, even though they come from Wikipedia, they're backtracked. You can see the sources they come from. Take a look at it. Let me know what you think. This is my first video here with Intuition Annie, and I guess just let me know what you think. Maybe I was too personal, but I wanted to kind of do something with these things that I felt in different parts of my life, just because that doesn't apply to me anymore. It can maybe apply into understanding somebody else, and I have the deepest compassion and sympathy, and I really do hope that not just unidentified people, but missing people can be found. And I think that whether you're just a construction worker, or I've done lifeguarding, worked at an ice cream shop, I've been to college for anthropology. I could take something from each of those little experiences and apply it to different people, and maybe just that little thing that maybe people missed. And like I said, it's just one of those things to consider. I personally think she drowned after becoming very, very intoxicated, and she shed her clothes to lose the weight and the burden of the clothing, and that's what I think happened. But like I said, she could still be found. So just let me know what you guys think. I'd like to do another similar case very soon. I'm not sure who I'll do, but like I said, it will either be like a missing person profile or another doe, and I really kind of have a lot of interest in unidentified doe cases. But thank you guys for tuning in. This is Intuition Annie, and if you want to help support me, please go to my Patreon. I'm not going to monetize this channel because I'm going to just talk about whatever controversy or things that, this is not, I'll label this not safe for work. This is not something where, it's censored, because you can't censor intuition or what you deduce. And sometimes that's dark, and that's okay. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.